Good afternoon. My name is Julia Villalon, and I'm the moderator of this podcast, which, as the name says, will be about the acclaimed Anthony Burgess novel, A Clockwork Orange. In the next minutes, my team, which is composed by Carla, Jimena, Esteban, Dario, and Milton, will present several elements of the novel as well as their opinion of the subject. The topics that we will be discussing today are the novel's structure and synopsis, the main themes and theses, the characters, the Natsat language, the Ludovicos technique, and the connection of the novel to the guide's themes. And well, with nothing left to say, let's begin with the first topic, which is structure and synopsis, that will be presented by Carla and Jimena.
Hi, my name is Jimena, and I will first talk about the synopsis of A Clockwork Orange. This novel, in a few words, is about Alex. Alex is a young English criminal that commits horrible crimes such as raping women, robberies, and beating people without mercy, who undergoes state-sponsored psychological rehabilitation for his violent behavior. And this rehabilitation is known as the Ludovico technique. In the story, we can see Alex's growth, how he went from having a gang for committing crimes and doing drugs together to face changes in his life that finally made him reflect on it and thus attain maturity. And now Carla will talk to you about the novel structure.
Well, I'm Carla, and as Jimena said, I'm going to talk about the structure of the novel. The structure of the novel is symmetrical. It consists of three parts or sections with 7 chapters each one, making a total of 21 chapters plus the index and the vocabulary list that is the native language and the translation. This structure symbolizes the passing through adulthood. As Jimena said, Alex passes through several changes in his life in order to get this maturity. The first in the first part, we know the behavior of Alex, what he has done, all the acts of violence, these adventures of violence. Then we have the second part, that is the next section, that consists of how he turned into good. I emphasize on good because he was made to be good by the Ludovico technique. That we will talk about it later in in the podcast. And in the last part, in the third one, is when he reaches his maturity by himself. He doesn't need any technique or any influence of other people on him. He does it by himself. The structure helps further the idea of growth and mutability, not only for Alex, but also for his friends and society. Another thing to notice on this structure is how the author makes 6 out of the 7 chapters the climax, all the problems and all the things that Alex is passing through, and the 7 chapter of each part, second and third, it how he sum up and he finds an answer for all these questions of all these problems. Well, then I give you the word, Julia.
Okay, thanks. Now let's move forward with the main themes with thesis with Esteban and Jimena.
Well, I am Esteban, and well, I'm going to present some of the themes that I think that are the most important and their thesis. Well, the themes that I think that are the main ones in the story, at least for me, are repressiveness or oppressiveness, we can say it, and deshumanization. I think this because basic because they are the ones that are presented throughout all the novel. I think that they transmit the main ideas for the novel, like these ideas of the government being oppressive, the government acting in bad forms, the government being irresponsible. And this idea leads to the other theme of the deshumanization, because we can see, as we in the novel, as we read in the novel, that Alex is transformed. Alex is the nature of Alex is taken away, we can say, in some kind, and he's turned to a machine. He ceases to choose. He doesn't have the ability to act by himself. This is why the analogy of the clockwork orange, sorry, is said, because the orange has its pure nature, we can see, and a machine is, well, is something that doesn't have that nature of being like natural, we can say. So it makes the analogy in order to see that the orange is modified. It doesn't conserve its nature at all. But well, um, the theme that sorry the thesis for these themes are the following. For the persiveness, I think that is because we have seen that it's by the persiveness is made by the government. I think that is that the government should consist of people that are responsible and have great values, because with it wouldn't work. It would be like this story. And from the other part, I think that the thesis for the deshumanization is that the human should act and take their decision by themselves. I think that, well, we have seen that the human needs to make this needs to have the capacity of making decisions, which is something that Alex doesn't have in the story. So yes, that's what I think, that those two themes are the main ones. But I might be wrong. So what do you think, Jimena?
Those themes you said were really interesting, and we could obviously see it on the novel. But there are also other themes that I found interesting, such as violence and criminality. I mean, on the first few chapters of the novel, we could see how Alex and his Droogs do drugs, mugging, robbing, gang fighting, vandalism, rape, arson, and murder. And we could also see the violence in the police, in the prison life, with police brutality and also a forced suicide. So for this theme of violence and criminality, a thesis could be that violence leads to many problems since it disrupts or affects the way we act and think. So, for example, we could see all the problems that Alex had to face with or deal with because of his crimes. Now, another theme in the story that I also found interesting is maturity. At the end of the story, we could see how Alex, after thinking of a series of changes, such as in the way of thinking, taste, and feeling, in taste in music and thinking in his future and all of that, uh, these changes he didn't achieve to at first, he didn't achieve to manage a recipe, but at the end he did, and he eventually attains maturity. So he decided to leave all his life as a drug behind him, and just as Bit did. And well, thesis for this theme is that the path to maturity involves many mistakes in past experiences, and this is also a. Alex says this in the story. He says that the nature of life consists of you of making mistakes and learning from them. So that's why those two themes were really interesting in my opinion. So now I give you the word, Julia.
Thank you. Well, that was pretty interesting. But what about the main characters? Your turn, Steven and Dave.
Well, uh, first let me clarify. I think the well, I think I just love the development of the characters, like all the characters. For example, the drugs of Alex. I love the role in the that they developed in the novel. For example, Dean transforming, we can say transforming into a policeman, or Georgie being against Alex, trying to overthrow him. Like those roles were very important. Also, like the Beck with the glasses, like the ones they assaulted. I think that they are also so important. But the main ones, I think that is, well, primarily the Alex, sorry, because it's our principal character, and Pete. You may ask why I think this. Well, basically because Alex, I can see in the novel, we all can see in the novel the transition it has. Like he from being a young teen that as already my teammate said, like from being a young teen that makes atrocious acts like robbing or murdering or yes, ultra violence by itself. He starts to develop in throughout the history a different change, a different way of think. Like he starts from this young, as I said, to completely mature man, like a new mature man, a new citizen, we can say. So I think that is so important because at the end I can see this. For example, when he starts to wanting to have a family, like a wife or a son, or he starts thinking about work. So this is very important for me because like we can see that he has matured. And well, the other character that, as I said, that I think that is the main one also, or one of the most important throughout the novel, sorry, is Pete. I think that Pete is very important because it can it show us the transition that Alex was making, that the transition that Alex wants to finalize. For example, we can see that Pete has a family and that is something that Alex wants. So it reflects also the all the transformation that it had, all the transition that it had throughout the novel. So that's why I think that those both are the most important. But well, Dario, what do you think?
Well, I would like to ask first, in this story, can we say that the novel is the history of Alex, in this case, one character, or it is the history of the confrontation between two forces, one being represented by Alex and the other one being represented by the government? Do you think it's this confrontation or it is about Alex?
Hmm. Well, I think that the novel revolves more around Alex, but I also think that it's the second one about the government. That it's
Yeah.
the one of the government. I think.
Well, I personally think it's more the second one, but maybe it's funny though because we see the characters in the eyes of Alex. I think so. This means that every characteristic, every trait, every behavior we see, even though it has happened, it's filtered to the eyes of this particular perspective. But if we mm, go apart a little, like in an external space of the story that is happening, we can see that actually Alex is fighting to another character. He's fighting to another morality, the morality of the state. He's trying to maintain its freedom against some organism that is trying to actually control its behavior in order to prevent him to have certain conducts. So we can see that maybe there's a division between two groups, the one of the youth and the juvenile and violent, which is Alex and his friends, and the one of the government that could be represented maybe in the prime minister or the priest, which have both two structures, one religious and one governmental, political, in which it is consolidated the form or distinct forms to control the people. So all the values, all the morality, all the techniques, all the processes that are necessary to conduct the actions of society in general are controlled by these individuals through different techniques. So I see that maybe Alex is it's trying to resist to this control and constructing a new character, which in this case is this villain, this suppose. Well, I think it's the characters are mainly conformed by these two parts, the one of Alex and the one of the state. But let's go to the next sections to see what are our conclusions and other information.
Okay, so that was interesting as well. Now let's talk about the native language with Milton and Jimena.
Um, Welcome everyone to the section of the five section of the Naxat language. I'm Milton Gonzalez, and I'm going to talk it about the Naxat language. Well, first of all, I would like to start explaining to you what is this Naxat language. Is this a language of our well, the Naxat language is a model of speech used by the Naxat. The Naxat are members of the teams of culture in the novel. But where does this Naxat come from? Well, it is complicated to say it because it has English language with some borrowed words from Russian. It also contains some influences from Cockney rhyming slang, some other words of unclear origin, and finally some other words that the author Burgess invented. I think the Naxal language it is very important in this novel. It allows us to feel like another Naxat or another drug. Before in the podcast, my partner Jimena also mentioned drug, and drug means a friend in Naxat. So here we can see how it is important. And now I give you the word for my partner Jimena that will continue talking more details about the Naxat language. Jimena?
Well, before moving on, I would like to highlight the glossary Burgess provided us at the beginning of the novel, which was very useful and interesting. Though some of the words were, for example, Drew, that means friends, as you already said, or Galas, which means voice, Grumpy, which means loud, Dobby means good, among others. And well, this was very helpful to let you read the novel, but also interesting, as I already said, because it's something we're not familiar with it, so it's something new to us. Now, the use of Naxal language allows the reader to empathize easier with Alex, to makes you feel as you are part of his gang and his subculture, as you already said, Milton. And also, Burgess viewed his use of Naxat language as a brainwashing device, because as we develop this new vocabulary, it subtly changes the way we think about things. So Naxat shows the subtle subliminal ways language can control others. The use of Naxat language also shows the imaginative supremacy of Alex and his fellows. So, and basically, the use of this language, it results really interesting and gives like something different to this novel. I really like the use of it. Now, that's it. That's everything I wanted to say. Now I give you the word, Julia.
Yes, I totally agree with you and the exclusivity of the Naxat language. Then another important element is the Ludovicos technique, which will be presented by Carla and Milton.
Well, if you don't know what is the Ludovico technique, this is the method or a therapy that requires someone to be chained up into a chair with the eyes wide open while watching extreme violence films for extended periods of time under the influence of drugs given by the doctors. If I remember, the drug used in this novel for the Ludovico technique was the serum 114. This therapy is used on trials on disturbed, weak, violent men like Alex. Alex was like all my classmates already said. Alex was a violent person. The purpose of this technique is the association of a nauseous feeling whenever experiencing or thinking about violence or sex, making it impossible to perform any violent action or doing any harm. This is, for example, when Alex tries to escape, but he does not achieve it because of this Ludovico technique. He tries to punch some another person, but at the end he can do it because he has all these nauseous feelings when thinking about doing any harm to other person. Well, Milton, I'd like to know what do you think about this Ludovico technique?
And thank you, Carla. This Ludovico technique really sounds very painful, and actually, I think it is. We can appreciate it in the novel when Alex reflects on consequences of this Ludovico technique. For example, Alex used to like to hear the symphonies of Beethoven, because for him this kind of symphonies was very relaxing. And when he was submitted to this technique, all he want to do is now, um, well, he actually only feel pain when he hear this music again. So another big consequences of this Ludovico technique is in the final part. I think Alex in the first of the second chapter wants to suicide, and this is a big scenario. So with the when how the Ludovico's technique work with the symphonies of Beethoven in Alex, well, they use as a background in the violin films the music of Beethoven with the purpose of leaving Alex traumatized, really, really traumatized. So that's all I have to say about the Ludovico's technique. So Julia, I give you the word.
Thank you, Milton. Now, the next topic will be explained by Dario, and it's the connection of the novel to the themes of the guide.
Well, first of all, let's remember that the IB language guide has a certain range of themes that we need to cover as IB students along the 2 years of the IB. So the intention in this case, we're going to explore how all these elements that we have been discussing along the other sections have connections between these themes. So I will use this visual aid in order to give you the definitions of each theme. But well, we have 5 themes. The first theme of this file of the guide, it says identities. Explore the nature of the self and what it is to be human. As we see in the novel, we have a person, and in this case Alex, or the other ones too, but mainly Alex, that has some tendencies, some impulses to be violent, to be sexual, to be without any control, without any border, any mental border. And in this case, he's exploring a part of himself. The state, the organization, the governmental identity is trying to control him. So we see a confrontation between these two elements that actually ends up in the creation of a new being. This can be related to the Freudian hypothesis of the mind. Well, second theme, we have experiences. Explore and tell the stories of events, experiences, and journeys that shape our life. We have already mentioned the technique of the Ludovico technique, which it's a traumatizing experience that takes Alex and converts him into this individual that cannot defend himself. Does not change. He just has a border that does not let him maintain its actions of the impulses that he has. Third theme, we have human ingenuity, explores the ways in which human creativity and innovation affect our world. These still have many phases, but I think that one of the relevant phases in which we can explore human ingenuity in the novel is the techniques, the processes, the strategies that the government utilizes to control society. We can see the example of this in the religious strategies. As we mentioned in the section of the characters, the priest is an important figure, but it's important to see how all this propaganda and how this intention to maintain safe the society actually contributes in a very effective way to control the same one. So I think that's an element of, uh, let's say, human organization in terms of ingenuity. Now, the fourth thing is social organization that is actually connected to this last one that says explore the ways in which groups of people organize themselves and are organized through common systems or interests. Obviously, there's pretty much great similarity with our context as people. The government mostly functions the same. The society mostly is organized, in the same way, but we can see that the state is corrupted since there's a lot of violence in this group, in this Nazi group, and the people suffers from this violence quite frequently. So the state actually tries to implement very radical strategies in order to transform quickly this situation, and we see that they do this in order to maintain control over the same society. So there's an organization with orderly to a goal, in this case the government, to maintain its own power, and it will do whatever it takes to accomplish that goals, even if that means to, well, damage the human rights of Alex or other criminals designed in this way by the state. Now, finally, the last theme of the IB Guide of Language B, sharing the planet. Explore the challenges and opportunities faced by individuals and communities in the modern world. Again, we have many ways of seeing this, but we can as well picture two groups. We can picture the youth group, which are mostly teenagers that are abandoned to society, that are abandoned to educate themselves and to grow as persons. And we have the humanized, the civilized world, which is controlled by the government and the people that are adhere to the rules that the government explores. They are not particularly a community, yet they are a social group. So we can see in the novel that even they have their own language or their own slang, and they form a unique culture. So first, there's 2 points. The first one is that two cultures can coexist, and if we do not measure the interactions between that two cultures, it can end up in violence. And the second is that the creation of new cultures can create new knowledge. This is also connected to the talk part of the IB. But in general, we can say that these isolated groups can actually have its own creation of knowledge that can enrich if joined together with other cultures in a peacefully manner. But well, I think that sums up pretty much everything that we have been discussed. And now let's pass the voice to Julia.
Okay, thanks. Um, uh, do you want to say something, Steven?
Yeah, I want to. Now that I think about it, one of the themes, like the themes, I think that it was the first one that you said, Dario, the identities theme. Now that I think about it, is very relevant because we can actually see how Alex is trying to find its identity, like through all these for these passing of the activities, like all the activities he made is in order to know himself, in order to know what he wants to be and what he is, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree also.
Yes.
Me too.
Okay. So finally, let's talk about your opinions on the novel and what did you like, what didn't you like? Jimena, I give you the word.
Well, what I liked about Clockwork Orange was how Alex changed his way of thinking at the end of the story. How he reflected on his past as a criminal and in youth to finally realize he's no longer young and actually know what to do with his life after the encounter he had with Pete and his wife. And I really think this is what life consists of. It consists of, like, we reach our personal growth and development by making mistakes in our past. And well, however, in my opinion, the crimes that Alice committed are unforgivable. But other than that, I really liked the plot. It was very entertaining, and I don't know, the use of the violence and descriptions of that was it kept the reader, well, at least me, engaged with the story. So to be honest, there was nothing I didn't like. But I don't know. What do you think, for example, Carla?
Yes, as you say, I like the way the author criticize the role of society. He shows how society will do whatever it takes for maintaining peace. I emphasize peace because this peace is what society believes as good or bad. This is implemented by this society. Another fact that I think you mentioned it is how a malicious boy passed to adulthood by making hundreds of mistakes, but at the end he was able to be my teacher. At the same time, I consider that the end was not fair at all. It is amazing how all his horrible actions were justified as something needed for him to be mature. He killed granny, and all this was justified just because he was able to be mature. For my opinion, I consider that this Ludovico technique was a punishment for all this bad behavior, but I don't think that was enough for him. Well, it's only my opinion. Milton, what do you think about the novel? What did you like or not about this novel?
Well, Carla, thank you again. Um, what I like about the book was how the author made me feel part of the life of Alex. Like, I don't know. I mean, in some parts of the story, I feel like if I was his best friend, even I felt that I was his brother. So the use of the language in the whole book and the originality of the author to create the Naza language only for this novel was one of the reasons why I engaged with this. Finally, in my opinion, I would like to add that I really like the challenge of the Naza language proposed obviously by the author. For me, finish this book was something special that I will never forget.
Hey
But,
Milton,
but
don't you think that maybe the use of this language make more tedious the reading, like of the novel? I mean, you said it is a challenge, but for example, there are other literary resources that actually, I think personally, make more difficult the understanding, not the enjoyment of the novel. I don't know what anyone has
well,
to say to that.
in my opinion, I think at the beginning of the novel, it is kind of, mm, I don't know, if it is not common and it is like very stressed to watch the glossary of the author to see what means this word in this specific language. But once you're mm, used to this language in the whole book, I don't know. For me, like I mentioned, I feel part of the society. I feel part of the book. But I don't know. It is just my single opinion. But Esteban, I don't know. What do you think? Tell me your opinion.
Well, I think that the use of that not sound language is well, I think like almost the same to you. Like it is very important because it lets you get involved in the story, like being part of the story. And also, I think that it is kind of stressing and hard to be like seeing a word in the book and returning to the we can say appendix or to the glossary of the NatSat. And but through the passing of time, it's very I think that it is very neat due to the fact that you start to know the words of the NatSat. Like for example, Vesumi that means crazy, or beg that is like the man. So like you start to use your mental ability to know, like you said, like learning a language. So I think that it is very neat. But well, I would like to add the things that I like. Well, firstly, let me clarify. I don't have things that I didn't like. I really like the story. But well, the things that I especially liked was it may sound crazy, but I liked and loved the use of the ultraviolence.
Oh my god, you're so sick, Stella.
But well, this has a reason. Well, I love it because like the novel let you, it opens the doors to a literature that you don't find everywhere. Sorry, like apart from being just bad, the ultraviolence, because well, it's violence, uh, it lets you appreciate and get more involved in the novel, like the Nat said. It lets you see different thinkings or something that it is not as usual or normal as everything else. So yes, the ultraviolence, I think that is one of the many points that I think that is important. But also, as you can see with all the things that I had said, I just love the transition of Alex from being a teen that doesn't care about anything we can say about from himself to a man that wants to be a citizen that has a role in the society, like having a family, having a work, having a wife. So yes, I think that those are the points that I really love about the story.
Okay. Well, uh, I mean, maybe I have problems with your proposition about liking the ultra violence. I understand you that, well, I don't know if you're a dangerous person. Uh, well, I think I like the morality or the use of the morality inside the book, mainly because it tries to explore, as I said, the perspective of one person, and maybe you could see this distorted perspective, and in a way that you can have empathy for it. Actually, it kind of just resembles to Lolita. It's like if you had seen it, I'll read it. But I don't know. It's funny to see how you see filtered the things about that. Mm, but as well, I think that the use of the language, the kind of the literary resources that the author uses, like it's kind of narrating it in first person. It's like kind of boring at the first pages of the book. But mm, I think there could be a better way to express it, and I actually think that maybe you could, or the actor could be use some help of Dostoevsky, which has a very good or very efficient talent in creating an atmosphere of the characters inside its mind. But well, I think that's it. So now I give you the floor to Chloe again.
Thank you. Now, as a conclusion, I can say that each of these points were discussed correctly, and the way that the author arranged the chapter in certain ways so that we could notice Alex's evolution throughout this history, the central evidences such as dehumanization, maturity, and violence that explain very well what the actor tried to say. All the characters and personalities that surrounded Alex and transforming him, the use of Nazi language as a way to show the rebellious behavior of Alex and his gang, and also the exclusivity, and the Dulowiko's technique, obviously, which shows the inhuman reinsertion of a sociopath to society. In this dystopian novel, Anthony Burgess talks about a government that transforms a human against his will, while ironically risking their own humanity. And that's why I think that what the author is trying to say is that being good should be an individual choice without pushing someone to be a Clockwork Orange. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for
Please don't
everyone.
do anything that
Thank
is
you.
related to the book.
Thank you.